Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Ever since Donald Trump has won the US election, governments across the world are trying to figure out what his second presidency will mean for them. How much of the campaign rhetoric will translate into policy? And a good indicator of that is the team that he's picking, the men and women who will shape and implement his policies. Who are they and what do they stand for? We've got some names that we'll discuss in a bit, but here's the headline on Trump 2.0. He's stacking his cabinet with China hawks, top officials who've consistently taken a tough position on China, and Beijing is worried, obviously. An aggressive Trump could box China in, especially on trade. So what is Xi Jinping doing? He's looking to solidify relations with other countries, including India. Look at this report in the Indian media. It says Chinese officials are praising the chemistry between Modi and Xi. They say talks are underway to return ties to normal, basically to the pre-Galwan situation. And how will that be achieved? Through a series of steps, like restarting direct flights between China and India, easing visa curbs on Chinese citizens, lifting the ban on Chinese apps, allowing Chinese journalists to visit India, and expanding Indian movie releases in China. Apparently, Bollywood is quite big there. Now, some of these asks are reasonable, like visa curbs and flights, but restoring Chinese mobile apps will be a tough sell. Remember, India banned dozens of Chinese applications after the Galwan clashes, like TikTok, PUBG, Weibo, WeChat. All of these apps were blocked in India, are still blocked in India. You can see why China wants to reverse that ban. Because India is a lucrative market. There are more than 700 million smartphone users in this country. Chinese tech giants want to tap into that market. But will India agree? Like I said, it's a tough sell. Indian officials have raised privacy concerns over Chinese apps. So the issue is not just political. There's also a strategic angle here, which is why India should be wary of rushing into such conversations. The border deal was struck in late October. Disengagement is over, but de-escalation remains. Both sides have tens of thousands of soldiers still deployed in the region. The goal must be to reduce that on both sides, to return to the 2020 status quo. Only then should such conversations be opened. But China seems to be in a hurry. They want talks on climate change and artificial intelligence. They're talking about next year's Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, the SCO Summit. China will be hosting that meeting. Their officials are expecting Prime Minister Modi to attend. So what explains this urgency in Beijing? Perhaps Donald Trump. America is China's biggest trading partner. They export goods worth more than $560 billion to the US. Imagine a 60% tariff on this trade. 60. Chinese exporters would lose out big time. Maybe that explains China's urgency. They feel India and China are on the same boat. Their officials say both sides should work together to navigate the Trump presidency. But is that true, this assessment? Are India and China really on the same boat? Well, New Delhi does not think so, and rightly so. Foreign Minister Jaishankar spoke about Trump 2.0. He said a lot of countries are nervous about his return, but India is not one of them.
Prime Minister was among the first 3 calls, I think, that President Trump took. And look, India, Prime Minister Modi has actually built rapport across multiple presidents. I know today a lot of countries are nervous about the US, okay? Let's be honest about it. We are not one of them.
So how should India respond to China's push for normalcy? Respond with caution. Remember, time is on India's side. We have no major issues with Donald Trump, but China cannot afford to wait. They need to prepare for the looming trade war with the US. Plus, Beijing continues to downplay the border. Listen to what their officials have said. The border issue has to be resolved at a faster pace, but we don't think that that issue should be at the center of the relationship. Well, India's position is quite the opposite. Fix the border, then focus on normalization. That's why it took so long to strike a border deal. China kept saying, forget the border. India kept saying, that's our first priority. Chances are this policy will continue, at least on New Delhi's side. China will have to earn India's trust at the border, complete the de-escalation, allow seamless patrolling, and restore the 2020 status quo. Until these steps are completed, India should remain alert and cautious.
vote.
Now let's tell you about Donald Trump's team. The full list is still in the making, but some key positions appear to be locked in, like Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, and the Border Control Chief. These are the top officials in any government. So who has been chosen for these posts, and what does it say about Trump 2.0? Let's start with the Secretary of State, basically America's foreign minister. It will most likely be this man, Marco Rubio. He's a senator from Florida. He ran against Donald Trump in 2016, but now he's a close ally. And his politics? Well, Rubio is a foreign policy hawk. He advocates aggressive tactics against American rivals, especially China, Venezuela, and Iran. He has questioned Chinese technology, Chinese industrial policy, and China's attempts to dethrone the US dollar. So Marco Rubio is very anti-China. And he's also very pro-Israel. He has refused to blame Israel for the civilian deaths in Gaza. He says it's 100% Hamas's fault. So Rubio, as foreign minister, would be a message to China, Israel, and Iran. Then we come to Trump's second pick, Mike Waltz. He will be the national security advisor, most likely. Now, Waltz is a congressman from Florida. He's a retired army colonel, and he too is a China hawk. What's more, he's a co-chair of the India Caucus. What is the India Caucus? It's a group that promotes relations between India and the US. It influences Washington's policy vis-a-vis India. The India Caucus is bipartisan. It has both Democrats and Republicans as members. And now the man heading it, co-chairing it, will be America's national security advisor. So this would be a message to India. Mike Waltz also serves on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He says the US needs to do more in the Indo-Pacific. If not, China may have the advantage. Now, both these choices make one thing clear. Trump 2.0 will focus heavily on China and not the good kind of focus. Whether it's trade or technology or chips, expect Donald Trump as president to ramp up the pressure on Beijing. And there's one more thing to note. Unlike Trump, Rubio and Waltz are not isolationists. An isolationist is typically someone who opposes involvement in the wars and affairs of other countries. Donald Trump does that. He is an isolationist. But Waltz and Rubio are not. Waltz had asked Biden to redeploy soldiers to Afghanistan, and Rubio openly backs Ukraine. Now, both men have recently diluted their positions to match Trump, but their past record is quite different. It was interventionist, not isolationist. Perhaps some relief for Europe and Ukraine there. And now the final foreign policy pick, the US ambassador to the United Nations. Trump has selected a congresswoman, Elise Stefanik. She doesn't have a lot of experience, but she is a staunch ally of Donald Trump. She shot to fame earlier this year when she grilled college principals for pro-Palestine protests. So her politics matches with Trump. And that wraps up foreign policy. Now let's look at the domestic departments. Donald Trump has picked Lee Zeldin to lead the Environment Protection Agency, or the EPA. Now, Zeldin is a former congressman from New York. It's a strange pick because he does not have the credentials for this job. He never talked about the environment on the campaign trail, but he's still been chosen, again, because of loyalty. In 2020, he voted against certifying Joe Biden's election victory. I guess Trump is now rewarding him for that. He's likely to pick another loyalist for Homeland Security. Homeland Security is like America's home ministry. And the chosen one is Kristi Noem. She is the governor of South Dakota. She was on the short list for Trump's running mate. If confirmed, she'll have a big role to play now because Trump is planning a mass deportation program. He wants to round up illegal migrants and send them back to their home countries. And for that, he needs Homeland Security. A few other names are also floating around, like Linda McMahon for Commerce Secretary. She's a former CEO of World Wrestling Entertainment, Commerce Secretary. And Bill Hagerty for Treasury Chief, a senator and former ambassador. Now, there's still no clarity on the two big appointments, the two biggest appointments, in fact, Pentagon Chief and Attorney General. And why are they the most important? Because Trump has grand plans for them. In his first term, he faced resistance from the Pentagon. He had 5 different defense secretaries. Now, Pentagon is like America's defense ministry, and the defense secretary is the equivalent of a defense minister. Trump had 5 of them in 4 years. They abandoned him. Some generals even called him a fascist. So this time, Trump has a new plan: install a loyalist in the Pentagon, a yes man who will carry out his orders, whether it's firing so-called woke generals or ending diversity training or rolling back NATO commitments. Same with the Justice Department. It is headed by the US Attorney General. Last time, Trump fired his first Attorney General. The second one said Trump should be nowhere near the White House. So what's the plan this time? Again, to install a loyalist. Trump's team says that this is going to be the most important pick. The Attorney General can influence investigations, target political rivals, and let Trump off the hook in his own cases. You may have noticed some names missing from this list, like Vivek Ramaswamy, Elon Musk, Robert Kennedy Jr. Have they been snubbed? Well, not necessarily. Vivek Ramaswamy could still end up heading the Education Department. Musk is likely to be an advisor, not a secretary. And RFK Jr. will most likely end up at the Health Department. This is what the new team is looking like. But appointments are not the hard part. Stability is, continuity is. Trump needs to make sure that he doesn't burn through secretaries like he did the last time. Remember, some of these appointments have to be confirmed by the US Senate. So replacing these people is going to be time-consuming. To avoid that, he's stacking the cabinet with loyalists. He certainly has the mandate to do that, but it does set the stage for tensions in Washington. Now let's talk about Bitcoin. It's the most famous cryptocurrency. On Tuesday, it hit a record high. Bitcoin was trading at $89,637. That's around 75 lakh Indian rupees. This rally began on November 5th, election day in America. Donald Trump won the election. And the crypto world cannot stop celebrating, it seems. Bitcoin has been rising since November 5th. It's up by over 30%. Dogecoin too has surged by 152%. Now, this is a cryptocurrency backed by Trump ally Elon Musk. But what explains this broader rally? Is Trump good for crypto? And will this rise sustain? Let's look at Bitcoin first. It's a digital currency. Bitcoin is not controlled by any country or bank. So there's no central authority. You buy it online and the transactions get recorded in a public list. It's called the blockchain. Now, Bitcoin is the oldest cryptocurrency. It's also the largest, but there are many more, the likes of Ethereum, Dogecoin, and Tether. Why are they soaring? Like I said, it has to do with Trump's win. In his first term, Trump was a crypto skeptic. He called it a scam. He said it was competing against the US dollar. But in 2024, Donald Trump has changed tack. He has pitched himself as a crypto messiah. He promised to turn America into the crypto capital of the world.
And instead of attacking industries of the future, we will embrace them, including making America the world capital for crypto and Bitcoin.
In September, Trump launched his own crypto venture. It's called World Liberty Financial. This was during campaigning. He even became the first former president to use Bitcoin during the campaign. Trump used it to buy burgers in New York. He used Bitcoin. The crypto companies loved all of this, so they donated millions to his campaign. The crypto industry spent $120 million supporting Donald Trump and his party. And clearly now all the lobbying has paid off. Their candidate has won. But will Trump formulate favorable policies as president? And he has made a lot of promises, including replacing the chair of the SEC. SEC is the Securities and Exchange Commission, that is the American market regulator.
You will keep their hands off Bitcoin. They're going to keep their hands off crypto. They're going to let it grow. We're going to let it grow. On day one, I will fire Gary Gensler and appoint a new SEC chairman.
The current SEC head is Gary Gensler. He wants more oversight on the crypto sector, and that's led to a lot of legal battles. So the crypto companies obviously want him out, and Trump is their man. He has also promised to keep the sector unregulated, basically no legal scrutiny. The third major promise that Trump has made is about energy. You see, Bitcoin is produced through a process called mining. And this mining consumes a lot of energy. Mining one Bitcoin takes up almost 12 years of household electricity, one Bitcoin. Like I said, it consumes a lot of energy, which also makes it very expensive. Trump wants to change that. He wants to make energy cheaper so that these companies can use more of it. And the US can become a global leader in Bitcoin mining. It is an ambitious plan. Trump says he will do it. Needless to say, crypto companies are all for it. They will finally have a pro-crypto president in the White House, which is why Bitcoin is on the rise. But is this rise sustainable? Let's look at America's crypto industry. More than 50 million Americans own digital assets. That means a lot of money is at stake. 50 million Americans have put money in cryptocurrencies. But while it's popular, it's also a speculative asset, a risky investment. It has a history of drastic swings in value. People have lost all their gains almost overnight in the past. In 2020, Bitcoin was worth $5,000. By the end of 2021, it went up to $69,000. Then came a crash. Cryptocurrency exchange FTX collapsed. Customers lost around $8 billion. This dampened confidence in cryptocurrencies. Then Binance exited the US market. And finally came the largest crypto crackdown in American history. All of this left companies spooked. At the start of this year, Bitcoin was at around $17,000. Now it is back to a record high of close to $90,000. So if you're an investor, it's best to be cautiously optimistic. To Canada now, where Khalistani terrorism is on the rise under the patronage of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Khalistanis are planning more attacks after they went on a rampage recently. Their target was a Hindu temple in the city of Brampton near Toronto. The attack took place on the 3rd of November, but the Khalistanis aren't done yet. They're planning more violence. The mastermind is the terrorist Gurpatwant Singh Pannu. Listen to what he said.
Pro-Khalistan Sikhs are going to continue countering these Indian terrorists organizing life certificate camps. Next challenge to these Indian diplomats will be on 16th November at Calibari Hindu Temple in Mississauga, 17th November, Triveni Hindu Temple in Brampton.
Pannu issued this threat yesterday. He publicized his plan. He even added ominous music from the 1980s to the background. It doesn't get more incriminating than this. So how did the Canadian authorities react? Are they beefing up security? Are they rounding up any potential troublemakers? Are they banning the violent Khalistanis outright? Of course not. The Canadian police were their usual meek selves. The Brampton Triveni Mandir put up this post yesterday. The police told them that there was, and I'm quoting, an extremely high and imminent threat level of violent protests. So obviously the temple prioritized the safety of the community and cancelled their event, just like the Khalistanis wanted. The temple also said, and I quote, "We are deeply saddened that Canadians now feel unsafe coming to Hindu temples in Canada." So that is the state of Canada today. Khalistani terrorists can just put out badly produced videos, threaten and attack Hindu temples, and shut down Indian consular activities. The Indian consulate in Toronto was supposed to conduct a documentation drive, which is a routine activity. The Hindu Triveni Mandir was the venue for this. The consulate was going to hand out what they call life certificates. These certificates help people get pensions from India. That was the event. And this is what the Khalistanis chose to target. The November 3rd attack was similar. The Indian consulate was handing out similar life certificates at the Hindu Sabha temple in Brampton. More than 1,000 people had gathered there, mostly older Indians, and that is where the Khalistanis attacked. This is what Pannu and his pals have declared war on. And here's what the Indian consulates have done. They've been asking for additional security so they can issue the certificates to the people who need them. But the Canadian police have been quite useless. Last week, the Indian consulate was forced to cancel some of these drives. They put out this scathing message. Let me read it out for you. In view of the security agencies conveying their inability to provide minimum security protection to the community camp organizers, the consulate has decided to cancel some of the scheduled consular camps. This was last week, before Pannu's latest video. So now the consulate may be forced to cancel all of its events, and Indians won't be able to get the documents that they need. Why? Because the Canadian government does not have a backbone, and because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is busy pandering to the Khalistanis for their votes. Trudeau is allowing Khalistani extremists to terrorize Indians for political gain, and I'm not exaggerating when I say terrorize. Look at Pannu again.
If we see any Indo-Canadian holding or raising an Indian Tiranga in Canada, you will be reported and designated as enemies of Sikhs and Canada. Indo-Canadians, stay away, stay safe, and do not become fodder in this battle for Khalistan. Indo-Canadians, be loyal to Canada or leave Canada.
He's openly threatening Indo-Canadians, saying that they risk becoming fodder. Who is Pannu to say what flag someone can hold up? Who is Pannu to question someone's loyalty to a country? For God's sake, he's a terrorist, a violent separatist who literally dreams of a new country while holding a dual American-Canadian citizenship. And this person thinks he can go around conducting loyalty tests. He gets away with everything because Trudeau is his enabler. He's more than happy to let terrorists like Pannu run riot, no matter the danger to Hindu temples and to Indians in general. Moving on to North Korea, it has ratified a defense pact with Russia, a North Korea-Russia defense pact. This deal was signed in June. That's when Russian President Putin visited Pyongyang. The two countries have now ratified it. According to this deal, both countries will come to each other's help in case of an attack. If one is attacked, the other will help. Basically, it's a military alliance. Are they doing it already, though? That seems to be the case in Ukraine. Russia is planning a counter-offensive in Kursk. It's a border region that Ukraine captured in August. Moscow wants to take it back, and it is amassing more than 50,000 troops to fight. Most of them are North Korean, apparently. Will this change the course of the Ukraine war? Our next report tells you.
Russia and North Korea, they are the new BFFs amid a changing world order. In June, Putin landed in Pyongyang. It was his first visit to the country in 24 years. He got the fanciest red carpet welcome. And it's here that the two countries signed a defense treaty. It says that both countries will provide immediate military assistance to each other if either one of them faces aggression. Last week, Russian lawmakers voted to ratify the deal. Putin signed it, and now North Korea too has ratified it. In simple terms, Moscow and Pyongyang now have a military pact that's almost like an alliance.
Are we going to hold military drills with them? Let us see. We can hold the drills too. Why not? There is the fourth article which deals with the mutual assistance in case of an aggression from a different state.
Does that mean they would fight each other's wars? Well, Western intelligence says they already are. According to the US and South Korea, at least 11,000 North Korean soldiers are in Russia. They've been sent to the front lines to battle Ukrainian troops. Most of them have been deployed to Kursk. It's a region in Russia, but has been under partial Ukrainian control since August. Ukrainian President Zelensky says Moscow has assembled 50,000 soldiers in Kursk. Most of them are North Korean. It's to launch a major assault.
The first battles with North Korean soldiers open a new chapter of instability in the world. Together with the world, we must do everything to ensure that this Russian step toward expanding the war, toward real escalation, that this step of his becomes a losing one for him and for North Korea.
Moscow is yet to comment on this. North Korea, too, hasn't said anything. But Zelensky isn't too happy. He's condemned the weak response of the West. Meanwhile, NATO and other European nations remain wary. The presence of North Korean troops means a third country is involved in fighting a war at their borders. For South Korea, there's a bigger worry. It's technically still at war with its northern neighbor, so Pyongyang's growing cooperation with Moscow has raised fears. Seoul is worried that North Korea may get nuclear technology from Russia in exchange for this help. So South Korea is aiming to boost cooperation with Ukraine. President Yoon Suk-yeol warns he may send weapons to Kyiv. But these threats aren't deterring Russia or North Korea. The Moscow-Pyongyang relationship goes back decades. It started in the 1950s with Kim Jong-un's grandfather Kim Il-sung. In between, they grew apart. But now, things are back on track, and the two countries are signing deals to prove that point, including this Mutual Defense Pact. Which brings us to the question, how far does this no-holds-barred friendship go? Well, there's nothing organic about this. The two countries may seem like BFFs, but they both have their own motives. For Putin, it's a new ally, a steady supplier of military weapons and now soldiers. For Kim Jong-un, Russia can help upgrade its nuclear technology. It can also help in food and fuel supplies. So there's a lot to be gained. But both sides also have a lot at stake. And not just them, the West as well. Because this new partnership spells doom and danger.
It's India versus Pakistan at the Champions Trophy. Don't worry, the tournament has not started yet. I'm talking about the battle off the pitch. You see, Pakistan is hosting the Champions Trophy in February next year. It's a one-day tournament with 8 teams, including India. Just one problem, though. India's cricket team will not travel to Pakistan. The reason? Pakistan's cricket board says no reason was given, but in the past, security has been an issue. Pakistan is simply not safe enough for Indian cricketers, any cricketers for that matter. India last visited Pakistan in the year 2008. The Mumbai terror attack happened the same year, and since then, no Indian team has travelled to Pakistan, none since 2008. The Indian board sees no reason to change that position. But where does that leave this tournament? One option is to hold a hybrid competition. All other teams can play in Pakistan, can play the matches in Pakistan if they want to. India would play its matches elsewhere, maybe in the UAE or in Sri Lanka. Remember, last year's Asia Cup was organized in the same way. India played its matches in Sri Lanka. The other matches were all played inside Pakistan. But this time, the Pakistan Cricket Board is not budging. They say a hybrid model is not possible. Instead, they are reaching out to their government and to the ICC for advice. The ICC is the International Cricket Council. It is the global cricketing authority. They decide on venues and tournament structures. So Pakistan's Cricket Board is leaning on its government and the ICC. Reports say the government will back the board, basically tell them to reject a hybrid model. So that leaves the decision to the ICC. We'll take a closer look at their options. But before that, some background. Why is this such a big deal? Well, for Pakistan, it's a grand comeback on the cricketing stage. Think back to the year 2009. The Sri Lankan team was attacked by terrorists in Lahore. After that, countries stopped touring Pakistan. Cut to 2019, cricket resumed, although on a very small scale. Which is why this Champions Trophy is so important for them. It is Pakistan's first global cricketing event since the year 2009. They badly wanted to succeed. Enter India. Team India is the heartbeat of any cricket tournament. You remove India, the ratings drop. So Pakistan will be under pressure from broadcasters and other cricketing nations. Like England, for example. Their board, the England board, says that a Champions Trophy without India is not even an option. And the ICC knows that too. Reports say they will ask Pakistan to use a hybrid model. And if the Pakistanis reject again, well, the ICC may take away Pakistan's hosting rights, basically organize the tournament in a different country. And if that happens, expect Pakistan to retaliate. Some reports say they could pull out from the Champions Trophy. They could also boycott future tournaments in India, like next year's Women's World Cup, sort of like a tit-for-tat move. There are basically 2 issues at play here. One is obviously the security concerns. Pakistan has reported more than 780 terror attacks this year, 780 attacks. They have claimed more than 950 lives. Last month, in October, we saw the second worst month in terms of terrorist attacks. Just last week, we saw a terror attack in Quetta. So New Delhi has a valid reason to not send the Indian cricket team there. We are not just talking about cricketers, we are talking about sporting ambassadors of India. Secondly, there's a political angle. The Pakistani Cricket Board is headed by Mohsin Naqvi. He also doubles up as the country's interior or home minister. Here in India, the Cricket Board is run by Jai Shah, who is the son of India's Home Minister Amit Shah. So expect political tensions to also rise. Jai Shah will also take over as ICC president in December. So India has a lot of clout at the ICC. If it comes to picking between India and Pakistan, most members will anyway pick India. So Pakistan's best option is to give in, to host a hybrid tournament. That way their broadcasters will be happy, Team India will be happy, and the tournament will largely stay in Pakistan. The other option is to fix their security situation. That involves going back in time to stop supporting terror groups at home. Knowing their history and their present circumstances, option 1 seems more viable. In India's Manipur, violence is flaring up again. Parts of the state were shut down today after reports of the killing of 10 people. Manipur police say they were armed militants. They attacked the central forces, but the state's tribal leaders forum says that they were volunteers. They were trying to protect their villages. Since May 2023, Manipur has been gripped by ethnic violence. More than 250 people have been killed, and despite military intervention, fighting continues in the state. So what triggered this recent flare-up? Our next report tells you.
Life is paralyzed once again in Manipur. Schools are closed, businesses are shuttered, roads are empty. There's no vehicle to be seen. There's an 11-hour shutdown in the hill districts of the state. It started from 5 a.m. on Tuesday. It comes after the killing of 10 people. The Manipur State Police says they were armed militants. They attacked a police post near the district town of Jiribam. The soldiers fired at them and they were killed in this gunfight.
We found that there were a lot of casualties. About 10 militants were found dead. 2 old persons, senior persons, were found burned to death. And 3 women and 3 children, minors, were found missing.
But the Tribal Leaders Forum disagrees. They say those killed were local village volunteers. They belonged to the Hamar ethnic group. They were patrolling the area to protect the tribal villages. So the council has called for a shutdown in the state today. Manipur has been gripped by ethnic violence since May last year. There are 2 warring sides, the majority Meiteis who live in the valley and Kukis who live in the hills. The violence began over a court decision, a move to give government quotas to the Meiteis. The minority Kukis did not like this. They said their benefits were being diluted. And thus the fighting began. Since then, around 250 people have been killed. Over 60,000 have been displaced. Jiribam is located in Manipur's westernmost region. It's a small district with a mixed population. Last week, a fresh round of violence broke out here. 80 to 100 armed assailants opened fire on the villagers. They set 17 homes on fire. In another village, Zeron, a woman from the Kuki community was reportedly raped and burnt alive. A day later, a woman from the valley-dominant Maitai community was shot dead. This is while she was working in a paddy field. Today, 2 men from the Maitai community were found dead. So, what is the government doing to stop the violence? Chief Minister Biren Singh says he will bring peace to Manipur within months. He has also appointed a special peace envoy, someone who will negotiate with the Kukis. But the problem is trust. Most Kuki groups do not trust the chief minister. They have accused him of fanning the flames. On Monday, 10 Kuki-Zo MLAs rejected the Manipur government's claim of peace talks. While the Biren Singh government says they have been engaging with the Kukis to promote peace, the Kuki MLAs call this a blatant lie. Manipur has been battling ethnic violence for over a year now. The areas controlled by the Meitei and Kuki tribes are separated by a stretch of no man's land. They are monitored by the central forces. It's to keep the two warring sides apart. But even those military solutions are failing, making long-lasting peace in the northeastern state an elusive goal.
Our next story is about the UN Climate Summit, the annual event where the world comes together to wring their hands in despair, to give grand speeches and to achieve nothing of real value. We're talking about the COP Climate Summit. This year, it's the 29th edition, the COP29. It's being held in Azerbaijan, one of the world's major natural gas producers. I know that sounds absurd, but this is technically a step up from the last time. The COP28 was held in the United Arab Emirates, which is, of course, a major oil producer. So moving from an oil producer to a natural gas producer is an upgrade. But it just shows how ridiculous the whole thing has become. COP climate summits have become a farce over the years. They don't really achieve anything tangible when it comes to climate change. Last year, we were at the COP28 summit in Dubai. The attending countries made a bold declaration. They said they would reduce the use of fossil fuels eventually, over time. That was a grand achievement of the COP28, the release of that lukewarm statement. This year, the plan is to promote climate funding via a global carbon credit market. Here's how it works. Polluting countries will have to mitigate the damage they do by sponsoring green projects in other countries. This lets polluting countries offset their own carbon emissions. That's the concept in a nutshell. The system should get finalized at the COP29, at least that's the plan. Another major task is expanding climate finance, basically creating a fund that poor countries can take loans from to pay for green projects. The goal is to get this fund to $1 trillion every year. 1 trillion. It's an ambitious task, and it would need backers from all over the world. But that is going to be a problem because the turnout this time is lackluster. Leaders from major countries are missing, like the United States. President Joe Biden is not in Azerbaijan for the summit. He sent his climate envoy instead. And it makes sense. His party just lost the US election. Donald Trump will be taking over soon, and Trump does not care about climate change. So there was probably no point in Biden attending. There isn't much he can do anymore. Biden's climate envoy gave a bleak assessment.
In January, we're going to inaugurate a president whose relationship to climate change is captured by the words hoax and fossil fuels. He's vowed to dismantle our environmental safeguards and once again withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. That is what he has said, and we should believe him.
So the US won't be fighting climate change in a few months. It's the world's second largest carbon emitter, and as things stand, there isn't much the world can do without American support, making this COP29 summit even more useless than usual. Then there's China, the world's largest carbon emitter. Chinese President Xi Jinping is not at the summit either. Neither is the European Commission President, Ursula von der Leyen. Normally, all these leaders show up at the COP summits. They don't do very much, but they make their presence felt. This time, they aren't even bothering to do that. What does that tell you? How effective will the summit really be without the major players? It seems some smaller nations have taken the hint, like Papua New Guinea. This is an island nation, one of the most vulnerable to sea level rise. So climate change is a very important subject there. But even Papua New Guinea pulled out of the summit saying, and I'm quoting, "It was a total waste of time." The whole summit seems like an exercise in futility, but it gets worse. While the big nations are missing, there is one surprising inclusion.
It's true that we haven't taken part in the COP since 2021, and we have fought and worked hard to be able to share the voice of the Afghan people with the world, which is very much affected by climate change. Indeed, climate change is a global problem. A single government or the people of a single country cannot adapt and take action.
That was the Taliban's climate representative. Yes, the Taliban are attending COP29. Azerbaijan gave them observer status. They're not a full-fledged delegation because the United Nations has not officially recognized this regime. But it seems like an attempt by Azerbaijan to legitimize the Taliban. And they're using the UN Climate Summit to do this, which discredits the summit even further. Not only is it a useless event, it is now also a vehicle to normalize ties with the Taliban. And don't get me wrong, the Afghans should definitely have a voice. They suffer disproportionately due to climate change. Heavy floods killed more than 300 Afghans this year alone, and they were exacerbated because of climate change, because of global warming. But the United Nations need to figure out how to engage with the Taliban. They need a concrete plan of action. They can't just allow the Taliban to get a backdoor entry into global affairs via the COP29. This year's climate summit will be remembered for this, for allowing the Taliban to attend. All other promises will be forgotten or postponed or cancelled by leaders like Trump. So then do we really need the COP summits? Or is it finally time to do away with this farce? It started as a social media quest but ended with a government crackdown. In China, more than 100,000 students, more than 1 lakh students embarked on a 50-kilometer nighttime bike ride. Do you know why? For soup dumplings. They cycled for about 5 hours continuously and caused a traffic gridlock between two cities. So police took to the streets, universities imposed restrictions, and rental firms remotely locked bikes on the roads. So why did a food trend lead to utter chaos? Was it all for dumplings? Or is there more to this story? Here's a report.
The Chinese students emerged on their bikes. More than 100,000 of them. They seemed to have come out of nowhere, and they rode for about 5 hours through the night. Sometimes bursting crackers on the way, other times bursting into song themselves. They covered a distance of about 50 kilometers cycling continuously. Why? For soup dumplings. It all began in June when 4 university students decided to make a long journey on their bicycles from the Chinese city of Zhengzhou in the capital of Henan province to the neighboring city of Kaifeng. They wanted to try guantangbao, which is a type of soup dumpling, and the journey indeed made them quite soupy. They said, "You don't get a second chance at youth." The message struck a chord with other young people, and so was born a social media trend. Night ride to Kaifeng. The government praised it. They called it a showcase of young people's passion. They saw it as an opportunity to boost local businesses. They announced discounts and they put additional traffic control measures in place. With anticipation in the air, the bike ride began. The so-called night riding army took to the streets. But who would have thought that they would land the Chinese government in hot soup? The two cities are connected by a 6-lane expressway. It was quickly jammed with thousands of bikes. As the gridlock worsened, China pulled a China and cracked down. Police took to loudspeakers. They urged young riders to leave. Universities imposed restrictions. They stopped students from leaving and asked the young riders to return to their dormitories. Bike rental firms remotely locked the bikes on the expressway. They hiked the prices as well. It was complete pandemonium. But one thing remained clear. The cycling event is the display of an almost cyclical phenomenon in China. Their economy is faltering. Growth has slowed down since the pandemic. There is a property slump. Government debt is rising. Consumption is low. Unemployment is soaring, with more than 1 in 5 young people jobless. And those who are working are part of an over-competitive, grinding job market. 75% Chinese workers say they are burnt out. High pressure is inflaming anxieties in the country, and the tensions are simmering on social media, leading to a number of rebellious trends among the young over the past year, including lying flat at work or college, which is kind of like quiet quitting. Or the gross outfits trend, where the young show up to work in pajamas to rebel against a culture of overachievement. Chinese workers are also growing plants, especially bananas, at the workplace to relieve stress, because they are quite literally going bananas. These trends are not just a cry for help. They also put the gridlock-causing biking trend into perspective. No wonder over 100,000 students cycled for hours together. Maybe they weren't really looking for dumplings after all, but for a sense of liberation in difficult times.
They say first impression is the last impression, but apparently this does not apply to Uranus. The seventh planet from the Sun and the coldest in our solar system, humans have only visited it once, for about 6 hours in 1986. Based on this mission's findings, scientists declared Uranus and its moons dead. Nearly 40 years later, new research is out and it upends everything we have understood about this icy world. Apparently, the planet is very much active. Its moons could have oceans and support life. So why did humans get it so wrong the first time? And does life exist on Uranus? Here's a report.
This icy ringed world is Uranus. It's the seventh planet from the Sun. It's also the third largest, the coldest, and arguably the weirdest planet in our solar system. But apparently, it's not as weird as we believe. Because according to new research, this enigma of a planet has been fooling us for nearly 40 years. Humans have only visited Uranus once. In 1986, NASA's Voyager 2 made the first and so far only visit to the planet. It took 9 years and traveled 2.8 billion kilometers to reach the mysterious planet. But once the Voyager got there, it spent only 6 hours collecting data. And everything we know about the planet has depended on what happened in those 6 hours, which is where we went terribly wrong, because the Voyager caught Uranus on a bad day. New research shows that when the spacecraft flew past the planet, there was a powerful storm. The sun was raging. It was creating solar wind, so powerful that it changed the landscape of Uranus. When Voyager 2 took a close-up of Uranus, it sent back pictures of the planet and its 5 major moons. And the scientists thought its findings were strange. The spacecraft indicated that the planet and its moons were inactive, which is unlike others in the solar system. The Voyager also showed that its magnetic field was distorted. A planet's magnetic field is crucial. It traps any gases and other materials coming off the planet and its moons. The material could be from oceans or other geological components. And by studying the magnetic field, we can know a lot about the planet. Voyager 2 found that Uranus's magnetic field was quashed, and there were no signs of geological activity, which meant that the planet and its moons were inactive. This came as a huge surprise, because it made Uranus one of its kind in our solar system. But this finding was wrong, and the solar storm was to blame. Its winds blew material away from Uranus and temporarily distorted the magnetic field, meaning Uranus and its 5 largest moons aren't as strange as we thought. They are most likely not dead. They are not sterile worlds. In fact, they may have oceans. They could be capable of supporting life. So, trust issues aside, this throws up a lot of questions, and NASA wants to answer them. It has been nearly 40 years since their last visit to Uranus. And now, NASA plans to launch a new mission, the Uranus Orbiter and Probe. It's expected to launch in a decade's time. It'll take a closer look at this mysterious planet in the outer reaches of our solar system. And hopefully, understanding Uranus correctly this time will not be out of reach.
Trump hasn't taken office yet, but the Trumpisms have started. On Sunday, he spoke to Indonesia's new president, Prabowo Subianto. As expected, Subianto congratulated Trump on his victory. He also expressed interest in meeting the president-elect. And Trump's response? Your English is so good. He also praised Subianto for the great job that he's doing in Indonesia, which is a bit strange because he's been in charge for less than a month. The internet is having a field day with this conversation. They have zeroed in on Subianto repeatedly calling Trump sir. Listen to this.
How are you doing? Everything good?
Yes, sir. I would like to congratulate you, personally on you. Wherever you are, I'm willing to fly to congratulate you.
And your English is so good.
All my training is American, sir. Yes, sir. Sir,
How are you?
Fine, thank you. Protected you, sir.
And your English is so good.
Yes, sir.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
Thank you, sir.
And
Sir.
I give you credit for that.
Thank you, sir.
It's not easy.
I'll try to, sir.
And your English is so good.
At your convenience, sir. Yes, sir.
Nice to talk to you. And your English is so good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, Mr. President. Thank you, sir.
Now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. Thousands walk through Warsaw in an Independence Day march called by Poland's far-right parties. Vatican taps into the AI boom, launching a digital replica of St. Peter's Basilica. And London's T-Rex exhibit gets a festive makeover for Christmas. Finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 1970, Cyclone Bhola hit eastern India and present-day Bangladesh. It killed nearly 500,000 people in both regions. Bhola remains the deadliest tropical cyclone on record. We're leaving you on that note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.